GM, oh, that works.
Oh man, I just asked Julien if we were going to have a fire pit, but we don't. So no fire.
We don't.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, Stani, thank you for being with us this afternoon. Last time I saw you, it was at ETC. You just come from one day because you just had a kid.
Yeah.
Congrats to you.
Thank you.
How has it been so far, being a father, being a father in Web3?
Very good. It's quite. I have a lot of respect for parents who are here and traveling to conferences and working in crypto. It's definitely not an easy thing, but it changed my perspective quite a lot. Sometimes I just put my work aside and say like DeFi will be there tomorrow as well. Or there might be a war room where I'm changing diapers at the same time. So it depends on the day.
Well, I'm glad you're thinking this way, like being able to go to sleep and be like, hey, well, hopefully the protocol will still be there tomorrow. Did it also change your perspective on what you're building and what impact you want to make?
Yes, maybe from a perspective of kind of like what you want to leave for the future and what's relevant. But also thinking about other generations as well. So I've been so far building quite a lot products for myself. So ironically, our protocol, I'm personally a power user, and I basically build in a way with our team and brainstorm features that really goes into my own personal use as well, and trying to kind of like think and build for similar user types. And having kids actually helps quite a lot to think about like what future generations actually want and might need, and thinking about like what kind of behavior they have. Obviously, my kid is too young to ape into any kind of yield farms. I have to wait for a few months more. But yeah, it's interesting to follow what younger generations are doing and what's important, because we're not really building a financial system for ourselves. We probably will use it for some time, and we will govern decentralized finance. But end of the day, what's important is that what are the future users are going to do. I personally, for example, I think the financial system that I'm living definitely isn't designed for me. I've never had a bank loan in my life. And I applied, and I moved from one country to another. And applied mortgages and never have been granted, but in DeFi things are different and more permissionless. So definitely there's a lot of thinking in my head about what we should build for future users.
And so your kid will need a stablecoin built on top of Aave. That's the mindset right now?
Mindset is thinking kind of like what's most beneficial for the Aave users. And Aave is a fascinating community and an ecosystem because we have a really great community. We do a lot of things in the Aave DAO. There's direct service providers that are contributing. If you are doing some sort of Web3 services, risk management, or any kind of similar activities that help the DAO or the protocol itself, you can be contracted directly by the DAO. But at the same time, we have users. And more and more, I've been thinking about what's the most important thing for the users. So, for example, with the idea of Go, main idea was to solve liquidity crunches for the Aave protocol effectively. So thinking always users first is the way to create a community, in my opinion.
So we are like 4 months, 5 months after the creation of Go, or the release of Go?
Yes. Roughly.
And it's I checked the price before jumping on the stage. It's 0.95 to $1.
Yes.
What about the JPEG? Was it intended?
Well, that's an interesting topic because whereas you can see Go currently under peg. What I call it is a growth peg. And what I mean by that is that the Aave community actually decides what they want to set the interest rates. We as the team and the company, we just build software. And there's other software contributors in the ecosystem as well. And everyone is doing a great job on upgrading the protocol and bringing new features. And in terms of Go, and the parameters, for example, decided was to set an interest rate that is lower than the market rate. And it actually has been quite calculated decision and coordination, mainly because it's really hard to actually grow a stablecoin. I actually got a first feeling how it feels and how it might have felt in the early days of the MakerDAO community as well. But especially because effectively what Aave protocol is, it's a market where you can supply digital assets, you can earn yield, and you can borrow against your assets. And obviously the main benefit is the collateralization. And then if you have a decentralized exchange, you can actually use the liquidity from a decentralized exchange to bootstrap a stablecoin. So our perspective comes more from our power is the collateralization, but you can't really use a stablecoin as a collateralized asset in the beginning. So our kind of like a way of going to the market and finding growth is with the interest rate that is lower what the Aave users were actually getting at that time and still currently in the market. And that way we got growth by just our existing users swapping from existing stablecoins to Go. Well, to be honest, we also sold Go passports, which had a Rave ticket and some Aave swag, and we sold like 300 of those. So like, there's a bunch of things that we're doing as a community to grow Go.
And there's like 35 million something Go in circulation?
Yes, and that's the kind of like a borrow cat limit, so there can't be more Go for now, unless the Aave DAO decides to increase that borrow cap. So the only way to get Go is now through an open market.
So looking back over those months after the launch, like what did you feel like you did right, and what did you feel like you did wrong for any Aave copy in the room that would like to launch their own token?
No, I've really noticed that there's a lot of builders here and a lot of familiar faces that are actually like building decentralized finance and also trying to envision what's the future of money. And I think something we realize is that I won't put too much pressure or thinking about what the general DeFi public thinks. Because in most cases they are not the users. And usually when I was seeing like discussions about the GoPeg, usually they are from other stablecoin teams, which is great because end of the day, we're one big community. But the main thing that is really important is your users and what benefit you're doing and whether you're doing the right thing. So I think we're focusing quite a lot on building a community, but what's also equally important is to think about who are the users and why they need a stablecoin, even if there is existing stablecoins out there, and what are the benefits for the users. And for the Aave protocol example, you can actually have more control by the Aave community to issue more liquidity directly into the protocol, bringing benefits, bringing also more predictability to interest rates. So our approach was purely more from the user perspective than actually more kind of like what we can solve generally. But the vision is bigger. So the vision is about how we can actually reinforce the infrastructure with decentralized finance and stablecoins and actually get stablecoins into actual usage, because a lot of folks that are using stablecoins are obviously early adopters, people in our community here. But the next question is then like how we actually get more stablecoins into real usage as well to average people.
So if we sum it up, like taking a step back at the Aave ecosystem, you have the lending protocol, okay, that's what you're known for. You have Aave Gochi, a game based on the Aave IP. There's a Lens protocol, a social network, let's say. You have Rave, which is like event lifestyle thing. You have a stablecoin now.
It kind of is a lifestyle. I've seen people, traveling for that too.
Do you see Go as a way of ruling them all, bringing everybody together in this ecosystem of applications that are tending to get out of the Web3 niche?
It's hard to say at this point because, the Aave protocol has product market fit to some extent. So there are people, for example, that they are willing to pay for, they are paying for the utility that the Aave protocol provides, and won't be happy necessarily that if that kind of facility will not exist as a user. But then again, Go is very young. In fact, I call it Lil Go because it's still a small stablecoin, and even we have a big vision where it should go and where decentralized finance, not just Aave, but everything should go in the future. It's really hard to tell what is actually going to break in, and it boils down to a bigger question: is that Web3 in general, it's in a state where a lot of people are actually comparing to the dot-com boom. I think we're kind of like even maybe like 10, 15 years before that stage in the evolution of Web3, basically where we're trying to actually, like we have the hardware, we have the operation system, and we're trying to figure out the interface, how do we interact with the blockchain. So basically what we think is that we're in the era of trying to figure out how to build a personal computer for the blockchain that anyone can actually use and have an interface. So it's that kind of early, and you can see it because if you talk about stablecoins with your non-crypto friends, they don't have any idea what you're talking about, and normal people as well. But I do believe that the way that we could get more growth is that we start to see more. I would not say only transactioning, but if we see more trading of goods and services on chain and using the blockchain as a way to reflect these transactions, whether through payments or RWAs, we can actually get closer to growing the gross domestic product, on-chain gross domestic product, and that grows the economy of Web3 more.
Would that come from building a new form of Shopify, or would that come from having your own credit card to expose Go to the masses?
It's really hard. I mean, there's really brilliant people working now on getting, kind of like a decentralized backend, using decentralized backend and decentralized finance, and then attaching card services that you can actually pay everywhere with a card, and that's very exciting. But it's really hard to actually get adoption in physical places, and somewhat I could see that we might get even faster adoption in digital spaces, but buying and selling, digital services or digital goods, or using the blockchain for those kind of settlements. So I think that might be where we'll see a bit more faster adoption. And I think just the kind of like a missing part is the interface, what I was mentioning about. And just to say what I mean by the interface is that, we all that are building decentralized finance, we're kind of like more of like a back-end, developers, and we're building infrastructure. And like what's missing is like a really good end-to-end products that have really good experience and design and are something that's, normal people can actually reflect to. And a lot of the infrastructure is still being built, like the account abstraction and whatnot, but we're getting closer to a point where you don't need to build anything, any infrastructure in decentralized finance. In fact, to build a DeFi product, you will probably focus more on the application itself and the experience. And that's why I think it's probably the best time to build DeFi products, because you don't need to care about the protocol level and trying to figure out how to make it secure and competitive, because you can just focus on getting users and keeping those users by building products that they love.
I think there's a slight paradox on that front, because when you talk about having a mean of exchange or having a cryptocurrency, a stablecoin, however you want to put it, that is widely used for the consumption of digital services and digital goods, you're at the same time considering like who are the people buying those type of services and goods. And it's mostly people from developed countries with mature financial systems. So people that already have lots of means to access those kind of services and goods. While at the other end of the spectrum, we often hear things about, oh yeah, adoption in Argentina is great because it's too inflationary, or in Turkey it's getting lots of inflation as well, so adoption is supposed to be here as well. And yet, you can imagine that there is probably less consumption of digital goods and digital services in countries that are struggling with other topics. Would you hope for a modern country, mature country, switching to blockchain because it's easier, like because the fees for using Shopify will be less, or Stripe will be less if you were using Go or something like this?
I mean, there is more upside if you can actually. There's more upside if you are targeting a developed market, because you can make a lot of impact at the same time, and you can actually create very powerful products. But I personally think it works both ways. So a lot of the tech that has been adopted usually happens quite often on developed countries, and there's a lot of builders that are incentivized to actually build these products and then scale globally. But I think it works both ways, because at the same time, Europe is very well known that the banking system works to some extent well. In UK, you can send funds to your friends and family, and it gets settled in few seconds. So in places where the infrastructure doesn't exist, there's going to be more upside for doing so. So I do think that an approach where you can actually both of the approaches work. And obviously, it really depends on the end user product that what the developers are building. But I do think that we have a global problem, like significant problem in economy, and it's inflation. I read today that the UK was celebrating that they had 2-year low inflation, and that was 4.6%. People are just like, they have forgotten that what inflation used to be years ago. So and it's not just Argentina and let's say Turkey and a lot of the regions in also developing countries, but in the Western countries as well. People losing savings and people losing money, and it's a big problem. So I do think that fundamentally building a universal financial system has a lot of value. And what grows economy very well is actually connecting people, right? So, for example, just taking examples from history, when you started to have like trade going between cities in the Nordics, that increased a lot of economy, and then trading between countries and global trading increased the economy. The internet itself increased the economy quite well, because you could actually buy anything across globally. So I think blockchain and decentralized finance will actually make it even easier, because you are a liquid citizen. So you can choose to use Aave protocol, you can choose to use something else, and to make that swap is very easy. You just go to another front end and connect your wallet and move your funds. And I think if it's that easy, it just becomes more efficient to trade and make business, and you have less counterparty risk. So that itself helps quite a lot.
So what I hear from what you say is that you are putting more emphasis on building a good protocol with good interfaces that's easily integratable, and that's at the end of the day delivering a good product for adoption at large, rather than focusing on specific regions or specific type of customer?
I would say we're focusing mostly on building the best possible products that the users can have, regardless where they are. And I think that's great in DeFi, because your market is global, right? And if you can increase the financial opportunity across globally and balance the financial opportunities, that's great. But effectively, the way we build products in our team, we're just trying to think and figure out what users are doing, what's the behavior, and how we can actually help them, and what's the feedback loop. So I think fundamentally we have to go back into the mindset of thinking how to build good products, and that's what basically will help us to understand whether there's a product market fit or there isn't, and if there isn't, what's the next thing we can actually do and try and learn from there. So I think it's effectively going back to basics and trying to build things.
So in an inflationary environment, like there is a lot of focus put on lending protocol and lending opportunities, just to protect yourself against the loss in purchasing power that you may have in the future. Like on your end, like you personally, what is your best bet against inflation?
Yeah, it's really hard because there isn't like a way to actually effectively protect yourself. I do think that some of the steps after having access to a stable currency, what happens is that you have some sort of access to consumer price indexes, but also scaling those are very hard on a blockchain. But that could be one option. But effectively, it has this kind of like model where you have to just actively be smart about your money and manage them. And the good thing about the blockchain and DeFi is that it's transparent and you can build this kind of like aggregators or money managers on chain in a transparent way. So I think regarding to inflation, I don't think anyone is really can fully protect. But at the same time, you can find opportunities on chain and make it even more fluid how you can actually protect yourself in the future. But that's why the situation is bad, because we're relying, even with stable coins, we're relying to fiat currencies. And the problem with fiat currencies, obviously, is that they're issued by central banks at their own will. And that's very hard to actually fight against, unless you're backing with something more like a harder assets.
Yeah, I've never voted for a central banker. That's the kind of thing I'm sad about. Like whenever you have election in France specifically, or even in Luxembourg, you don't vote for a candidate that will tell you like, this is the guy I will put at the head of the central bank. But I like what you say when you mention you need to be smart about your money, right? Do you see that as a blocker for decentralized finance and finance in general, the lack of financial literacy for some of the users? And are you doing anything towards this direction?
Yeah, even if you were hearing Rune's talk, for example, earlier, I think something interesting he mentioned is that finance shouldn't be like very like a complex thing that you should be scared to manage your funds and your wealth. Instead, it should feel like a game. And I do agree with that point. Is that we have to find ways that are really easier to digest by the consumers and find what is the way to actually create that interaction layer with users. For us, it's purely like we want to just design things better and make our applications more relatable, easy to use, and DeFi applications in general should be easier than more traditional banking applications and money application. And actually, in some parts they are like. If you are in a permissionless environment, it's really easy to onboard. You connect your wallet. It's that easy versus doing a KYC in the long form. But getting into that environment where you have cryptographic assets, that's the hardest part to actually the onboarding part. So there's sort of stuff just to build, but that's why, like as I mentioned, like I'm excited about DeFi now because you can focus on that like a super unique experience, and those will be the bigger companies actually and the bigger brands of DeFi that are able to nail it.
But from a Web 2 perspective, from a mid-space perspective, in order to educate someone on finance, or in order to give an advice to someone on finance, you need to be a financial advisor. You need to have a license. You need to be wearing a suit or having a meeting and showing only assets that are vested and blue checked and so on. Like it doesn't take anything to do a Web3 based advice.
I mean, about the education, and going back to the products, because I know there's a lot of builders here and thinking how to solve and program money. I just think that if applications are really good enough, and you've done a lot of user testing and you have listened to the users and trying to figure their pain points, you need less of that education. So it's kind of a journey for you going into DeFi and achieving your goals. But I do think some amount of education is important, and I do think that over generations, the way we feel about money and finance changes all the time, and there's a lot of reasons for that. So, for example, previous generations, they work hard on a day-to-day and gave their funds to someone who actually had better understanding about markets, who could read the markets, who could understand what's happening in the global economy. But for example, today, especially thinking about myself, I grew up online, right? So I basically got information access, things I could read about that didn't exist in libraries or school, for example, and I had the direct access to information. So your kids in the future probably have the same experience growing on-chain, so they actually see everything that is happening on-chain, transparency, and can make better decisions. So that kind of a situation where the normal average kind of people that are out there and less maybe are doing less financial decisions, they can actually make better decisions than previous generations because of the information that is available. And I think that's the frustration that comes maybe from my generations and probably the upcoming ones, that you're smart enough to manage your money and you have also social component there as well, because you see how other people are managing funds on chain, and you want to do it yourself, or you can delegate as well. But definitely, like the way we think about finance has changed quite a lot.
So I would have loved to ask you some question about the real-world asset, it translates into this, maybe bridging the experience between the old generation and new generation inside DeFi at large. But I'm seeing the timers saying we are out of time. Is that we're out of time?
I think we have 23 minutes.
Yes? No? Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. So I agree with what you said between being able to manage your own money and the perspective from the older generation. So do you see a way to bridge that with the real-world asset initiative that you may have at Aave, or do you expect to be listing also a real-world asset as in your lending protocol at some point?
We've done some experimentation. So there's a wonderful team called Centrifuge, which we created with them together a real-world asset market with the credit that they issue on chain. And that was quite an exciting experience as a separate Aave protocol market. But also I could see more and more treasuries being on chain at the same time, and maybe also seeing real-world assets backing Go as well. But it really depends on the appetite of the community and the Aave DAO, how much they want to actually have real-world assets also backing Go. But yeah, in general, it makes a lot of sense to combine these two worlds and reflect value that is off-chain and get it into on-chain environment where it can be traded and programmed efficiently. So I do think that will happen at some point. But Go is still small, so it's still a little Go, so let's not forget about that. And at some point, that point comes where real-world asset becomes important for the Aave ecosystem.
So let's have Go grow up and eventually repeg soon. That's what we can wish for the near future of Aave, I think.
Yes, I think so. And how many of you have already Go? That's actually quite good. How many of you have a Aave ticket? That's equal amount. Did you all buy a Go pass? Who has a Go pass? Oh, that's cool. That's nice. So that's actually like you're using Go to buy stuff. I think that's very fascinating.
No, it's super cool, but it's still stuck in the Web3 niche. I'd love for someone to like onboard with no wallets and get Go and then do something like someone from outside of the Web3 space, just looking at the rooster for Aave and say like, I want to see that DJ. How do I get into this party? Oh, it's a crypto party. I don't have a wallet. What is a wallet?
We actually have we did together with Rad Radio a kind of collab where you can actually tip the DJs tonight with Go. And that's pretty cool. I wanted additional things that you could do with Go in Aave, but our team said like you need to shut up. Like there's so many things already. But that's a reality. Like we should start using things we build, and support each other. And I think that's where we get at least really interesting circulation within our community.
I can't wait for having people trying to bribe the bouncer at their entrance of Rave, saying, like, I just tipped the DJ, let me in. Like,
Yeah, if you pay higher gas.
all right. I think we're out of time. So, well, thank you a lot, Stani, for this fireside chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.